About 5 years ago, I made a decision to quit drinking alcohol. That decision ended up being perhaps one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Now, this video is probably not going to be a video that people who really love alcohol will want to watch. So if you really enjoy partying and enjoy booze and enjoy that whole element of nightlife and drinking, this video is not for you. You've been warned. Now, I wouldn't ever have considered myself an alcoholic by any means. I drank booze whenever it was a social event was on. I would go over to parties and it was there, and sometimes I'd be bringing my own. It was just this common thread for so many different events. Booze was available. Everyone was drinking it. It was just something you did. It was common to just walk around a party with a drink in your hand. Even going over to friends' houses, we would, bring a case of beer or a bottle of wine or whatever liquor you could think of. And it was just something that was just a staple of my early 20s and late teens. Basically when I was legal drinking age. From like 18 to 25, more or less. There was a lot of drinking every weekend. It wasn't something I would do during the weekdays. It was pretty rare if that ever happened. That would only usually be if we had friends getting together. It was primarily a social thing I did with people. And when I made the decision to quit, it completely changed my life in ways I did and did not expect. My life now, I appreciate so much more in so many different ways because I removed alcohol from my weekly routine. It just became a habit. When you would go to a party, it was there. But what changed? The biggest difference I noticed was I felt better. Like 90% of the time. I didn't get hangovers anymore, which was huge. Like, you could wake up the next day and still feel, okay, I've got tons of energy to be productive and do something. My mind's clear. I don't feel foggy. I don't feel nauseous. I'm good to go. Let's get something done. That change alone was groundbreaking. Just not having hangovers anymore. It sounds kind of simple when you think about it. Like, it's oversimplification. Like, okay, yeah, you don't have hangovers anymore, so what? But when you think about how many hangovers you have from drinking or will get from drinking frequently, or how it just affects your body in general, how many days that stacks up, how many days you're basically just spending in recuperation time in trying to get yourself back to feeling normal. A lot of that time is spent in trying to feel better, when if you had felt better already, you would have been able to allocate that time to doing something productive. Now, I'm not saying that everything in life needs to be, productivity optimized either. There's, plenty of times in life to, kick back, enjoy life, spend some time in stillness, spend some time, reflecting or taking it slower than a high speed pace. I think there's tons of value in that. But that didn't really ever happen when I was hungover. I was more just like, I feel like crap. I just I don't even want to like deal with the day. And then I would probably just end up doing something that was leisurely, but just not feeling really great afterwards. Even if I was playing a video game or something, I just didn't feel good. I was just like, oh, I feel awful. But I was incentivized in those days to just loaf around, like when you're hungover, because you don't really feel like doing anything productive. And if you do happen to have some appointment booked and you do have to do something important, you have to get up early, you have to do whatever it is, you usually feel terrible while you have to do it and just can't wait for it to be over. Drinking also, one of the big things that changed was my sleep schedule. I stopped staying up till like 2 a.m. all the time, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., however long it was that the party went on until I went to bed. I started getting way better sleep. I started feeling refreshed and great in the morning when I woke up. And I just felt ready for the day in general after I stopped. Consistently, day after day after day. And that compound effect over years really changes you. Like I value how I feel, how my body feels so much more today than I ever did before. And I'm so glad I quit. Like, it was just, to me now, drinking is like, I have no desire to drink alcohol anymore at all. But there were changes that were somewhat expected, but I didn't understand the full consequence and second and third order effects of. That was my social life. So alcohol for a long period of time was not only a social lubricant, but a social lifeline for me. You know, there's this culture around drinking that, you know, people will bond over. They'll bond over how drinks taste, or, you know, how expensive they are, or, you know, rare it is to find and drink this thing, or whatever it is. You can come up with so many different reasons to drink a bottle of beer or a glass of wine and talk about it. And it brings people together. It's, for a long time, drinking has brought people together. And, you know, it's common to just go to a restaurant with some friends and, you know, drink alcohol and just chat. It's a very social thing to do. But when I decided to stop drinking, I suddenly realized just how much people didn't like that. And that was a huge eye-opener. When I would go to restaurants my friends would invite me to, or just going out to parties in general, I had decided to stop drinking, but I still wanted to hang around with them and have fun. You know, nothing about me changed other than I just stopped drinking. Suddenly, I consistently found myself judged for not drinking. I would get questions like, why are you not drinking anymore? Are you an alcoholic? What, like, why are you sober? Like, just have a drink with us. Like, what's the big deal? It's just a drink. I couldn't believe the amount of social pressure I had to continue to drink around these people. It didn't take me long to realize that a lot of these friends I had were really just drinking buddies. The reason that we were all friends or continued to be friends was alcohol. There wasn't a whole lot we had in common outside of it. Even if it was friends I made from school or wherever. And it started to make me think, do these friends I have actually care about me? But I continued with my decision. I said, no, I'm not going to drink. And for a while, I still was invited to these parties, and I would still keep going. And you know, there was tons of pressure to drink, and usually I would just, like, you know, everybody would be drinking beer or wine or hard liquor or whatever, and I would just order a tea. I would stick out like a sore thumb. Suddenly, you know, I would get cracks at like for being lame or like a party pooper or whatever it was, even though I was still bringing myself to the party and laughing, having fun, trying to joke around just as I usually would. But it really seemed to bother a lot of people who were drinking that I wasn't drinking. And I've consistently found that culture, even amongst people I didn't know that well beforehand. Say, for example, I met somebody later on down the road, and this is before I made the this is before they wouldn't have known that I'd made the switch. I was just sober. I met folks who were really into alcohol, and after making the decision to be sober, I would meet them, and they themselves would judge me as well, even though they weren't friends I had from before. I would get the same, are you an alcoholic? Why did you stop drinking? Like, drinking isn't that bad. It's just a drink. It's just alcohol. You're making this a way bigger deal than you need to be. And the funny thing was, I was never trying to make a big deal about it, nor trying to get attention from stop drinking. I just wanted to feel better, and I just didn't really like alcohol that much. But it was crazy just how much people who drank didn't like it when you don't drink with them. That was an eye-opener. And I started to think about like my friendships with these people, and like, how deep do these friendships really run? Like, do these people actually care about me? Like, I think I care about them, but do they care about me? Like, does it go in both ways? And over time, I got invited to parties less and less. And I think a big reason of that did come down to, yeah, he doesn't drink, he doesn't party. And there's some energy and level to drinking that comes with a party. Like, when you do drink alcohol, it kind of amps up the energy in a way, but it also adds this chaotic mix into the elements of the party. That is essentially what a party is: chaos. If everyone shows up and everyone's sober, there's not really any exciting stories that usually come out of that party. It's usually just, oh yeah, everyone showed up, had a couple chit chats and left. There's something about alcohol that just invites a lot of chaos into an environment and also into your life. And I got to the point where I really didn't care for that chaos anymore. I wanted more order in my life. I just didn't want to feel gross and bad all the time. I wanted to feel good day to day. I actually enjoyed the feeling of being sober way more than the feeling of being drunk. And to this day, that hasn't really changed. I would much rather spend an evening talking with someone who is sober, having a conversation with them about whatever topic it is we decide to talk about, rather than trying to muddle my way through a drunk conversation where it is completely incoherent, makes no sense, and is not in the least bit engaging unless you are also drunk. That's another thing I learned. Being sober and talking to drunk people is really, really annoying. And I'm sure they feel the same way. Being drunk and trying to talk to someone who is sober is probably really, really annoying. They think you're no fun because you're not matching their energy. And that's okay. If you're into that partying lifestyle and you're into like drinking culture, it can be a lot of fun. But I also found that a lot of decisions I would make when I was drinking or under the influence of alcohol, 95% of the time were bad decisions. Decisions I shouldn't have made, regret making, wish I hadn't have done. Not like anything was like, fortunately, life-changing or like, horrifically bad. None of that happened, thankfully. But there were things that I just wish didn't happen. They just didn't need to happen. And if I wasn't drinking, they probably wouldn't have happened. And that alone, honestly, just would be nice to have, either be able to undo or go back in time and just change the outcome of, but we can't do that. I didn't like how the feeling of not being in control of your own person, your own body. You feel like you're just not totally there. You can't think straight. You can't think really at all. And I felt like the more I drank, the stupider I became, just in general in life. Like I stopped being able to really make great decisions in my life. And I really felt like alcohol does make you stupid. Not just in the moment, but like the long-term effects of alcohol. It feels like it makes you stupid. And so this video is probably going to be pretty controversial because this is just my opinion, right? Like I'm not saying this is fact, but you know, this is just my experience with it. And you don't have to like that. That's okay. This is just the reason why I stopped and why I don't plan to ever continue. The last time I had a drink was probably last Christmas, and it was at a Christmas party, and I usually don't like to drink. I didn't really want to, but everybody was doing it. And when you're in a situation in a social environment where everyone is drinking, it is incredibly hard not to have a drink. The social pressure is real. You will just get it from so many individuals. However, I am pretty used to just getting a glass of water and drinking that. And a lot of people don't even know. They just assume you're drinking vodka or something like that. But I did have a old fashioned and I did enjoy it. Like it tasted good. I think old fashions taste great actually, but I only had one or two and I didn't really feel like how I felt after. Anyway, I felt like I could have just gone without it. I could have gone a glass of water or a club soda and I would have been fine. Drinking that evening did not really add to my experience. It didn't make the party any better. The party was just meh to begin with. And honestly, like I wouldn't have minded just being sober and drinking some water and chatting with people while they were still somewhat sober, and then eventually just leave when people start to get drunk. And that's usually what I do now in social events. I mean, I still get invited to social events now where people are drinking and I don't drink, and I still am social and I chit chat for a while, but there is this certain point where like the alcohol takes over the room and everybody is just too incoherent. You can't, like, they're not forming sentences correctly. They are like stumbling around. they don't even see it in themselves how much of how silly they look. And I mean, it's not a big deal. Like there's nothing wrong with looking silly every once in a while. But yeah, I just don't see the appeal anymore. I don't really like it. And the one thing I really am grateful for is like how much time not drinking has allotted for me to devote to things I really care about in my life. Whatever, project I'm building or whatever, connections I'm trying to connect with, whatever people I'm trying to enjoy the experience of being with, that richness is amplified like tenfold. And my productivity has probably amplified tenfold since I stopped. And those two reasons alone have been plenty enough for me. And then, also just being more healthy in general. Alcohol is not particularly healthy for you. And having your body just feel good is amazing. Especially if you're into athletics or any sports. It gives you a slight performance edge just having a faster recovery time. But yeah, it's hard to say like, is this decision right for everybody? I'm not trying to judge people who do drink. That's not the kind of person I am. If you drink, that's fine. I don't care. Other people judge me for not drinking, but like, I just don't like the effects. I don't enjoy them. I just would rather be sober, and I'm happier sober. So that's why I am sober. Yeah, I don't really feel the pull for alcohol anymore. And I'm grateful for that. And yeah, if you've ever considered stopping alcohol for a while or trying it out, it is pretty interesting, like how much you might get done. Trying it out, stopping for 3 months, just see how it makes you feel, see how it changes your life. You might be surprised. Your social network will change if you stop drinking. That was a big change for me. I stopped hanging around people who drank a lot, and most of my friends now are mostly people who I really enjoy spending time with. And I've formed like closer connections with. I get to talk to them about really interesting things, and like we can carry on conversations without us both looking like total idiots and forming incoherent sentences. So I like that. That's pretty cool. But yeah, that is what I've learned from being sober for about 5 years.